Good afternoon, this is Oxinity channel in education. In our community we have teachers from all over the world and they all come from different walks of life. We've had people that have studied linguistics or languages, but also most of them have studied many other subjects. So for instance, we've had lawyers and doctors and
bartenders,
poets, psychologists, so the list is very, very long. But what they have in common is that one day they decided that they wanted to pursue a career in English teaching. So they got qualified and they're now successfully teaching English. And today we're going to talk with two new colleagues, Scott Bevington and Liz Narrillos in Madrid. And we have Graham Bell in Malaga. We have Louis Morris and Rob Wiley here in Barcelona. And all of them are going to share with us their experience and they're going to tell us how they are using the skills that they have acquired from their backgrounds to language teaching. I'm Radmila Gurkova. Let's get started. So, Scott and Liz, before becoming English teachers, what was your field of expertise? And how did you know that you would make good teachers?
Me personally, I came mainly from a sales background. Started off in a call centre, became a coach. I did a number of sales roles after that, which include recruitment. I then went on to working with kids, like doing various youth working jobs, and really it kind of it made me realise that I was kind of quite natural with people, you build relationships with these people and help become a mentor, which is essentially what we do now as well. I got told during these jobs, oh, you would make a very good teacher. I've also done a lot of travelling and, I've heard about the TEFL a lot and it's always made me really think, oh, maybe that's something I should do. Coming to Spain, I just thought, a Brexit-proof job. People are always going to want to employ English teachers. And if it's something that I felt I could do, people told me I could do, then what's to stop me?
Excellent. Yeah, so as for me, I come from a communications background, started my career in public relations, and I worked in the corporate world for about 10 years. The reason I went into it is because I've always enjoyed human interaction, and I thought that I would get that with that job. And even though I did get it a little bit, I was still missing some of that aspect in my job. And so a few months ago, I decided to shift my career and try something different. And because I'm trilingual, I speak 3 languages, I thought that maybe becoming a language teacher was something that I could do and I could do well. And and that's why I'm here, and I love it.
Excellent. And Louis and Rob, as trainers, do you help trainees identify their strengths and transfer them to teaching?
I think it's a part of being a trainer. Scott mentioned his background is in sales and communications, and I know Graham and I have got some background working in the service industry in bars. There's always something, even if it doesn't seem like it, that you can take from that. So working in a bar, you have to speak to people all the time. Yeah. Sometimes it's not the most enlightening conversation, it's much better in the classroom, but there's definitely something to take from that. It's being social, it's being able to talk to strangers. On TEFL courses, I've had people who've come from backgrounds where they've taught a little bit, like maybe a musical instrument or maybe something like surfing or skating, and it's clearly something you can take from that as well. Mm-hmm. So it's just adapting what you've already learned to a classroom environment, and
you can always find some skill, something that people have acquired over the years, working to then link it into the English teaching. I guess it's important you want to find speak with the trainees and find out what their strengths are, but also their weaknesses as well, right? So you need to know maybe where they can improve, how they can improve going forward. Some people maybe have a lot of self-confidence and they're quite happy just to talk about their strengths. Maybe they don't want to focus too much on the weaknesses, but then you get some people who are maybe a little bit more shy and not so confident, and maybe they tend to focus more on the weaknesses than the strengths. So I guess you have to work with each individual person to help them improve.
Yeah, I think a lot of people only discover what their strengths and weaknesses are when they start to teach as well.
Yeah.
And I think, to be honest, a lot of new teachers make too much of their perceived weaknesses. Quite often it's easily overcome with a little bit more preparation.
Yeah. It's one of those things that we've done when you're doing it, when you're working, practice, right? Mm-hmm. If you're actually in the classroom teaching, then you want to improve.
Graham, and from your point of view as trainer as well, have you noticed that there are some backgrounds that help more people in their teaching career? If so, which ones are they, or it doesn't matter?
Yeah, no, to touch on what Louis and Rob said, it's people who come from communicative backgrounds definitely seem to adapt themselves to teaching. They have more confidence. They're used to being in front of people and interacting with people. From a sales aspect, I think they have this natural reflection because they have to be successful and have to see what does and what doesn't work. So as an instructor, I can tap into that just to show how they can apply that to their newly found teaching skills. But definitely anyone from a communicative or a kind of background that motivates change, they really adapt well to the course and seem to be successful teachers too.
Okay, excellent. So, Liz and Scott, when you started working as English teachers, you had to work on your profiles. So, what advice did you receive regarding what to put in the first place, what to highlight from your strengths?
Yeah, well, it's all about making your personality shine through. You know, if you've got a sense of humour, use it. At the same time, no one wants to see a big list of what you've done in your life because, you know, you might not be quite as interested as you think. You know, so just keep it short, sharp and sweet. Think about the things people look for in an English teacher. You know, it might be in the business world, it might be to go travelling. Make sure that these words stick out. You know, a word on its own can jump out the page, so you don't need to essentially waffle on, you know, going on about your strengths, because people don't have time. I used to work in recruitment. If we had, you know, a CV that was 4 pages long, you'd look at it thinking, oh, I just can't be bothered looking at that. So you put it to one side, and that is what people do. You don't necessarily read everything, but they do scan for certain key words which jump out.
Exactly. Really talk about your differentiators and what makes you, you know, whatever your strengths are and what makes you comfortable being a teacher, and really focus on those keywords and be very, you know, short and sweet.
What would you put first, your educational background or your vocational background?
I think we have a... well, they're back.
Yeah, we're back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for me, everyone's different. At the end of the day, if we all look the same, then it's hard to, you know, you look unique. You've got to think about your unique selling points at the end of the day, and whatever you feel is right. You know, you're technically selling yourself, and you've only got a certain amount of time to capture someone's imagination. Certain people are looking to go for, you know, they might want to work with kids. Certain people, you know, more sort of towards the travel. So it's whatever you really think. But again, as long as you're captivating the audience, you know, it's entirely up to yourself, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree.
Okay, excellent. So, an open questions to all of those who watch us. Guys, you can share with us on YouTube what your strengths are and what skills you transferred from your previous background to teaching. That would be very interesting to know.
Yeah, I have a question for Graham, actually, my friend Graham in Malaga there. So I want to know, how do you think teachers can make the most of their educational background or their experience that they've had? What kind of practical tips could you give?
Yeah, it's important not to forget where you come from. When I'm on my third career now, but I started off as a social worker, and when I transferred into working in the hotel industry, in the bar industry, I transferred so many skills into that new career, and now I'm at a point in a third career. So there's so many skills that I've acquired along the way, which I can now carry forward. So a practical skill for any teachers, don't forget it. Don't forget where you come from. You can share that with your students. It will help you to build a connection, and they will have trust in you. If you come from the same sector as the person you're teaching, it's great because you can share all the knowledge, and you can have laughs and jokes about funny things that happen in the sector too. It just gives you a better connection, and it gives more trust.
Perfect.
Excellent. Actually, here in Spain, we have it's quite common that people coming from the hospitality background, English speakers, native English speakers, decide that why not try teaching, and yeah, they eventually make great teachers. So, what skills do they acquire in hospitality that are so appropriate for teaching?
I'm not sure if it's skills they acquire during it. When I used to hire people, I often wondered why someone was applying to be a barman if they don't like people and spending time with people. And that happens a lot. You go into a bar and you meet the surly bartender who doesn't want to talk to you. But when you get the good bar staff who want to talk to people, a lot of it also from the bar trade comes from the on-the-job training. There's not really a qualification in the United Kingdom for being a bartender. So you learn and you pick up as you go. And that's very similar technique to teaching English and for the actual student learning English. You want them to learn on the go, on the job training. So these are some of the techniques that I think what people who come from the hospitality sector thrive becoming teachers.
Okay, and so we've spoken about people that have had different professions and then they switch to English teaching, but we've had also another case, quite the opposite. Teachers, qualified teachers with huge experience who cannot adapt so quickly to the new approaches or new systems of teaching. So how can we help these people, Louis?
Yeah, I think we spoke last week or the week before about methodology being so important to a teacher, and it can be very difficult if you come from, for us, we teach in a very communicative way at Oxbridge. So coming from a more traditional classroom where you have maybe 30 students and you're going to go through the grammar in a textbook way, it's quite hard to shift your focus to what I can just actually have a conversation with my students and I only have to make sure they learn a few things throughout the class. It is a different approach, and I think it's hard for people, but it's just like retraining or adjusting for any new job. It takes time, it takes preparation in a different way than it would in another classroom, and eventually you'll get it right. And it's not for everybody, because some people like to follow a more formulated way of teaching, I think, but then that opportunity is there for us too, because we have the activities, and you can mix it up a bit if you want, or you can follow it directly. I think the two groups is the people who have taught before, who maybe come from a different background, and people who don't have much professional background in anything at all can be quite hard in the classroom, because being a teacher also requires that you're on time, that you're well prepared. So maybe it's a hard first job, but I think that's the two groups that we have to help the most.
Yeah. Any tips for these people, Rob?
I guess that, well, we mentioned, sort of on the job training there that Graham mentioned. I would agree with what he said about teaching. You can only learn so much theory, right? But then it's actually being with the students, being in the classroom, kind of being thrown in front of them that you learn the skills. And with regards to being punctual and stuff like that, I mean, it's something that hopefully you're not too late, unless maybe you're Spanish and you're always there. But it's just, again, it's these skills that you learn and you pick up as you're going along and learn from each other. We got the community here, so we can all learn from each other, and we're always all learning anyway.
Shadowing teachers helps.
Shadowing teachers as well, yeah. So, a trainee shadowing a teacher.
Okay. And listen, Scott, what would you do, for instance, because you come from backgrounds that are quite related to communication, you said, and dealing with people, so that's easy for you. But what about a student that approaches you from a field of expertise that you know pretty much nothing about? Like, let's say, a doctor or, I don't know, a lawyer wanting something very specific. What would you do? Would you be able to teach them?
Well, I think that we're very lucky to belong to a community of teachers, as Oxinity is, and the good thing is that we can reach out to our fellow, our colleagues and see if anyone has that expertise, and they can either help us, craft a good lesson for that particular field, or we can ask them to take on that student. So
essentially, a lesson is usually an hour long. So, you've got 1 hour, so it's not like you're sitting there for half a day regurgitating the inner workings of a textbook that they studied at university. But as Liz said, there's a lot of people out there who might have done the same thing before. But of course, ask the person what it is specifically that they're looking for, get an idea. And, that's where you can go and do a bit of research. But of course, as Liz said, we're very, very lucky. Everyone's here to help each other. So yeah, the experience is out there. You just need to ask.
Good. We've got, it's not so much a question as a statement from Miha. She says that her experience from a corporate background means that she treats her students like clients. So for Scott and Liz, I suppose you're both in a different ways from a corporate background too. Do you think that your background predisposes you to see your students as clients?
I suppose you've got to add value to the lesson at the end of the day. But the difference is, with clients, you might speak a little bit more formally. Of course, you build a rapport, and sometimes, when you can do it, you start becoming a little bit more informal. But you can't really teach them like that. At the end of the day, for me, it's a one-to-one. You're building rapport. We're quite lucky and get the opportunity to do some of the lessons in a cafe. And it seems more sort of conversational. So for me, keep in mind that they are essentially a client. Yeah. However, they don't always treat them as one.
Exactly. I mean, you have to keep in mind that you're providing a service to them, and that they have some goals that you have to help them meet. So, but as Scott said, it's important that you build rapport and that you treat them in a little bit more of an informal way that you would a client in a corporate setting.
Great. So we have a very big community here with teachers from different backgrounds. How can we learn from that variety of backgrounds? What can we do?
Yeah, well, we mentioned a couple of times now the community. So yeah, we all learn from each other. As Liz said, we can, if we need some advice or some help, I think we're all very comfortable asking each other for help. Some tips maybe. I think we've done intensive courses as well, right? So we've done maybe 6 or 9 hours with the same student, and
you've organized
them. And so we've with some other teachers, we've come together and we've used our experience and our different backgrounds to come up with a specific 9-hour session or 6-hour session for the student. We take all of our different skills together, put it together, and we come up with a good plan. And yeah, I guess just using our experience and background.
Another example online from Julie. She said she took a student off another teacher because of her academic background, and I suppose that is what the community gives you, the ability to share the students around.
Trade students.
Yeah. We also had, I think it's important to mention that we did used to run masterclasses, so if a teacher has a particular background, they could give
definitely
some education in that too.
Bringing closer that profession to the rest of the people. Excellent. So we have English for specific purposes, which is usually what we prepare together. But then there is English for academic purposes, which is something that sometimes students request for. So Louis, what's the difference?
I think it's very similar in many ways. It's like you might talk about business English as like a sub-language, I suppose, or it's got its own ways and, ways of acting and ways of talking. And academic English is very like that. So if you write an essay, you're going to use words that you wouldn't use in real life. And those of us who have been through university degrees know that when you use those words in real life, people look at you funny. So you learn very quickly that it's a different language. You don't go around saying thus and moreover very commonly, but you use them in essays. So I think it's important, especially we work in Spain, and a lot of people here like to study. It's one of the most educated societies in Europe. And that means a lot of people want to go and study in the UK or in other countries, and they're probably going to do that in English. And they may have to pass an exam to do that. So I think it's very handy if we can provide the help that they need for that. So that's why EAP is on the market.
Excellent. I think we have another question or statement.
Julie asks, are there any skills that are not worth Transferring.
That's interesting.
It's an interesting one. That looks like one Graham wants to answer.
Thanks for that, Rob.
No, you're welcome. Anytime.
Yeah, I think once you don't want to transfer, ones that keep you too rigid. I think some people come from a technical background and they're used to very specific goals. I must meet this goal. This must happen. It must be measurable. Whereas you're not going to teach someone a grammar point instantly. You may have to teach this 3 or 4 times over a period of months, because the repetitive process and the production of them using it, which is going to learn, which is really hard for some people who come from, sales backgrounds where there's an instant target that they can hit. It's realizing that you're going to fail as a teacher. The student's going to fail, but you got to keep going at it.
I think also it's knowing your students' level. I mean, we are all native level speakers and our English is very good. And maybe when we're having conversations in class, we're talking about things, we have to be aware of our students' level and not to speak about things that they wouldn't be able to follow. I like the English language, I like to use it to write, but I'm not going to try and dictate to my students that they use this or that word. So I think even within English, there's some skills that you have to think about. Is this worth transferring now? You've got to understand their needs as well. So it depends on the student, I guess. We have another question here. Can you teach academic English if you haven't got an academic background?
That is applicable to any subject that you don't have a background in, I guess. What would you say?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, if we're thinking in terms of having to pass an exam to enter university, I mean, look, I know we don't use textbooks, etc., but you can use that as a guide. I think so long as you know the process and what the student needs in order to get into the university, then yeah, you still, I think, as a teacher, if you're well prepared, you'd still be able to teach that student, yeah.
It's just a bit of extra preparation, right? As for any ESP, I mean, I've taught legal English, I've taught architectural English, medical English, and I don't have a background in any of these areas. I just had to prepare a little harder for that. And it's just another register, really, academic English, so you just learn to be a bit more formal.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any more questions?
So Maria asks, can a non-native teacher teach ESP lessons? All of us are native.
I would say yes again. Yeah, we've got these guys in Madrid who are waving, so maybe they want to take that over.
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually not a native. I am from Spain, and I do teach English and French. So you can do it as long as you have a level to do it, enough level to teach.
Yeah, I don't think it makes a difference, really. I think
it all comes to preparation.
It all comes down to preparation, and yeah, just because somebody's non-native doesn't mean they can't teach the language. Well, we got living proof in Madrid there with Liz, so yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got quite a lot of questions coming in. We're having a run on them now.
Go ahead.
So Peter first, and he says he speaks to a lot of teachers who apply to Oxinity. So Peter handles the applications to become teachers. He says some have teaching experience and some don't, but actually points out, or rather posits the question, there isn't life a teaching experience. If you have children, if you have interns, you're often teaching. So does anyone have anything that they can draw on from their life when they felt they've been a teacher?
It's a good question, Peter.
Yeah. Me personally, I actually grew up in a family who fostered children right up until I was sort of early teens. And a lot of the children that came to the house, they didn't really know how to be kids. They had to grow up too quick. And, just a simple thing of, this is how you play, here's a toy car, grabbing the hand, and, we actually helped, me and my brothers, helped socialise children. And, it was only until later on in life that I realised we were teaching kids to be kids again. So I suppose that's a good example.
Yeah, for me, if you look at the theory, we all have an innate ability to learn a language, and we learn to speak in the acquiring method from our mother. So parents should be some of the best teachers out there. And that example you gave there of you socializing those kids, that's peer teaching. You know, so it's that method. It really is the heart of learning a language is coming from that family aspect.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're getting some answers to our open question about the strengths that people have had and how they've applied them too. So I'll read out a couple of them. James says he comes from a design and international business management background, and it helps him clients achieve new goals with English as a communication tool. So again, I suppose that's working from a corporate background. Good. Okay. And
do we have more time to answer more questions? One more.
We don't have so many more questions here. A lot of statements.
Okay. So shall we read the last one?
Okay, yeah. So there's one more question. What would you say to someone who's fresh out of university and wanted to become an English teacher? So what transferable skills can you get just from an education background, not vocationally?
We're all having a think.
I think university is very good for teaching you for public speaking.
Yeah.
You always have to give presentations in university, so definitely standing in front of a class for the first time can be a bit nervous for some teachers.
Yeah.
But university probably prepares you a little bit more for that. And just to have confidence in your knowledge, I suppose, is something else that I'd take from coming from an academic background.
Yeah, I guess that maybe there's them skills, but then there may be some missing that someone who has worked a little bit in another job, whether it's bartending, whatever it may be, stacking shelves, doesn't matter. They're going to have acquired some skills on the job.
Yeah,
rather than someone who's exactly,
being
you know,
on time,
exactly all them skills we were mentioning before.
not being hungover,
yeah,
things that
exactly.
students don't know, you know. But they're definitely things that students can take from university that apply.
Yeah, absolutely.
Essentially, all students are usually masters of partying and socialising, so that's certainly a transferable skill in terms of building rapport and meeting, thousands of new people.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's quite good as well it's quite good as well to highlight the difference in teaching style, because at university that lecture mentality of sitting there watching someone is exactly what we don't want them to do.
Yeah.
And then you have the workshop mentality, and then even some university courses have work experience, which is on the job training. So there are bits that we can drag from the university experience, I think.
Yeah, it's a broad brush, right? Because it depends what subject they've come from.
Absolutely.
Yeah. As we said right at the beginning, there's always something you can take from someone's experience. No one's been sat in a room completely isolated for 20 years. And if they had been, their English wouldn't be very good. So,
True.
Very good.
Excellent. Okay, guys. Well, many thanks for sharing your experiences. That was very inspiring, actually. So let me take it from that last point. For all of you who are recent graduates, if you want to pursue a career as English teachers, you will be more than welcome. If you want to switch your career and become an English teacher, fantastic. Just get in touch. We will be very happy to have you at oxinity.com. See you next Friday at 12. Bye.
Bye.